Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxon. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. So this podcast episode is about Everyday Embodiment. So this is a new product we have coming out. I'll be talking about that a little bit, but it won't be salesy. I'll be just giving something of value based around the same theme as Everyday Embodiment. So that's everydayembodiment.com. I'll say that again at the end. It's interesting. I've done embodiment work for many, many years and interviewed so many cool people on the podcast, tried loads of techniques, been to India and Japan and done sort of, cool esoteric things. And what it all comes back down to is embodiment at home in your everyday life. It's very tempting when one first gets into a body-mind practice to make it exotic. Maybe it's the yoga clothes, the yoga voice. Maybe it's, getting into sort of martial arts and becoming all martial arty and dressing up that way. Maybe your conscious dance and that becomes your life. And it's interesting that these, at first, is often quite a thing you do a couple of times a week. You go to Aikido dojo or you go to your conscious dance group or whatever the thing is that you do, your yoga studio, whatever. And it's something quite separate from your life. And in a way, that's the beauty of it. There's an exoticism. There is often a foreign appeal. It's cool, it's foreign. It's like, oh, wow, that's from India. Oh, that's from Japan. Oh, Tibetan Buddhism, whatever the thing is. And it's a place where you go that's separate from your life. And that can be quite a relief, if you have stress in your life, if you have a difficult family situation, whatever it is, to go somewhere where that doesn't apply is a great relief. We also see the sort of international version of this where people can go off to Bali, go off to Goa or whatever it is. And again, it's like, exotic, special island, paradise, and they can be someone else. They can put on some new trappings, get a couple of new tattoos, change their dress code. You'll see this in like Freshers Week at university. People will do the same thing as well. They'll put on a sort of interesting persona. Anyway, that is a stage people can go through, and it's okay. I get it. I went there with Aikido. I got into things Japanese and like Japanese calligraphy, and it was all Japanesey in how I did things, and that was okay. But I was never Japanese, And at a certain point, I realised that yes, the Aikido was great for me, but it was staying on the mat. One time, actually, I forgot my Aikido kit in unusual circumstances, and I couldn't even do the Aikido technique on the mat without my Aikido kit. Like, my technique was like noticeably worse, and I thought, wow, if it just did my normal street clothes. And it wasn't because of restrictive movement, it was because that's how I'd learned it, something called state-dependent learning, or in this case, clue-dependent learning. So how do we reintegrate it back into my life became my obsession. I actually did my dissertation on the meaning of Aikido in people's lives. Later on, embodied yoga principles. I made a whole system which was all about connecting those two things. Maybe you've seen the episode on getting yoga off the mat, heard the episode, sorry. That's well worth a listen if you haven't. There are certain things which can help integrate practices into daily life. For example, talking about them, doing little bits of that practice in your life. That's one approach, and that's very good. And I still do that. And, that's become sort of my specialism, and I support that. The other thing is, of course, is how do we do embodiment in our lives, in our homes? So what we did with Everyday Embodiment is I recorded parts of the course for each room of the house. So there's like one for the bathroom, one for the kitchen, one for the bedroom, one for the living room, one for the office, and saying, like, here's some practices you can do in all these different locations. I kept it really simple. Everyday Embodiment's really, I guess it's for two kinds of people. It's for people who are either new to embodiment and they're like, hey, what is this? Just give me something practical I can use. I'm a normal person and I don't want something exotic or fancy. So I think that's one group of people. And the other group of people would be body mind practitioners who are quite deep into it, but they want to integrate it more day to day. For me, that's where the real magic is. This is almost like a kind of Taoist idea that the real magic is not in the exoticism in the Himalayas, in Bali, wherever it is, but it's actually in our day-to-day life. That's where the real shit is. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where it shows the quality of our practice, but also that's where the deep work's to be done. These are the hard situations. And I often joke to my students, try this technique at first with someone who's just annoying at work. And then, if you've managed that, then try it with your kids or your parents or your husband or whatever. Yeah. So that is the ultimate challenge in some ways. And the real deal when it comes to depth and spirituality is using the things at home. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. We look at it in terms of rooms, and we say, okay, here's a centering technique, for example, you can do in the bathroom while brushing your teeth, or in the kitchen while waiting for the kettle to boil, or while you're waiting for your computer to load up before you check your emails in the morning. Super, super practical times that people can do the different techniques. Like I particularly in Everyday Embodiment give the sort of best quick wins, the things that I think are most effective that I've studied, applied to different students over the years and said, okay, this is what I think works most well, having seen it with different clients. So I talked about the where, then we also talk about the who. So we'll talk about techniques for your partner, techniques for your kids. Jane Dancy covers that, who's does embodied parenting. We talk about friends, lovers, colleagues, different people in your life. Yeah. Also when, where to fit into your daily schedule, how it fits in with your actual life. Oh, excuse me, I'm recording this late at night. I'm not bored of this product. I'm just tired. It's been a hell of a long day and it's 20 to 10 now at night. There you go. The real deal, the real Mark, authentic Mark, knackered, but still, I actually feel really good about this product. Product, it sounds a bit mechanistic. What is it? It's basically a bunch of videos where you can learn about this stuff. And I recorded it in my house, which was a bit vulnerable, like all the different rooms in my house where I'm sort of showing it. Because normally I have one nice shot in the living room with a couple of plants in the background after it being cleaned up, or in a studio. So this was but a bit strange doing it in my own house, but it seemed appropriate for it. What I love about this, I think it's accessible. I think it's for people. If you're listening to this podcast and you're like, you know what, I don't really know how to start. I just want something useful to start with, something that can help my relationships, reduce my stress, build my confidence, whatever it is. This is a good one. It's cheap. It's cheap. It's not expensive. Let me get the release date out. So we are launching this on Monday the 20th. And I think we got it for 1 day at just £59, which is in dollars, like, what's that, $75? So pretty cheap. And then we'll be a little bit more after that, but not huge money. It's basically just a bunch of useful videos, some tips, ways to get your practices established, simple practices. We'll give it away with a bunch of freebies. So we'll give it, in the initial thing, we'll add some of my centering books and trauma books and different things like that. Okay, what else to say about it, really? Just want to reinforce that I think this is where the work is. This is where the work is for all of us in daily life, with us, people we love, with in our home environment, in our office environment, in the places we are day to day. This is the places we spend the most time. So if we can't use embodiment in those places, then sort of what's the point, really? So one of the things on the website says, what about the other 23 hours? If you do a yoga class 1 hour a day, what about the other hours? Okay, some of those you're asleep, sure, but what about the rest of it? And I'd say it's not for people who are like super esoteric. It's just for people who are just ordinary people who want to get more embodiment into their life. Maybe practitioners who are experienced and they're like, you know what, this is great that I've got this practice, but how do I make that show up day to day? These are some of the top tips in this course for how to do that. I think I'm going to leave this one short and sweet just because I'm a bit knackered, actually, and listening to my body and get some rest. So enjoy. You can find it at embodimenteveryday.com. embodimenteveryday.com. So we couldn't get Everyday Embodiment for some reason as a website. So it's embodimenteveryday.com on the website. You can find that. If you get my newsletter, of course, you will hear about it, in time for the special offer. If you don't get the newsletter, what are you playing at? Get on there, embodifacilitator.com, and you can sign up for the newsletter. There you go. Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodifacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If you're, most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodifacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodifacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.